The shockwave in West Africa. West Africa just witnessed a moment that nobody saw coming. For months, for years, the headlines were the same. ECOWAS versus the Sahel juntas. Threats of military intervention. Crushing sanctions on entire populations. Presidents and generals exchanging fire through press statements. And then suddenly, something different happened. In Ouagadougou, the capital of Burkina Faso, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the young revolutionary leader who has shaken up Africa's political order, sat across the table from ECOWAS representatives, led by Sierra Leone's president, Julius Maada Bio. And instead of threats, instead of condemnation, instead of ultimatums, ECOWAS spoke of brotherhood. They called for cooperation. They talked about unity. They painted a picture of a shared destiny. But here's the burning question that has every African and frankly, every global power watching with wide eyes. Is this real change? Or is this another mask? Another game? Another attempt to contain the unstoppable Sahel revolutions? This is the story of Traoré, ECOWAS, and the new brotherhood. And whether West Africa has just turned a page in history or entered another chapter of deception. From sanctions to smiles. A sudden shift. Not long ago, ECOWAS and Traoré's Burkina Faso were locked in a hostile standoff. Let us not sugarcoat it. ECOWAS treated the Sahel revolutions Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger as threats to the so-called democratic order. They imposed sanctions that strangled economies already battered by war. They threatened to invade Niger after the July 2023 coup. They demanded fast-track elections while ignoring the very real battles being fought on the ground against terrorism. And through it all, Ibrahim Traoré became the voice of defiance. A young captain in his early 30s, with no interest in playing the Western scripted politics. Traoré stood before his people and declared, "We will not kneel. We will not be slaves." Fast forward, and suddenly ECOWAS sends an olive branch. Brotherhood. They call it. A new tone. A new language. Why? Because reality forced them to. Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger created the Alliance of Sahel States. AES. A military and political pact that became stronger by the day. Together, they expelled French troops, challenged Western mining contracts, and forged new ties with Russia, Turkey, China, and others. Their people rallied behind them, waving flags, singing songs of independence, and rejecting the old order. ECOWAS couldn't ignore it anymore. The sanctions weren't breaking them. The threats weren't scaring them. The AES was rising. So ECOWAS had a choice. Double down on confrontation, or pivot to cooperation. In Ouagadougou, they chose cooperation, at least in words. The symbolism of Ouagadougou. The location of the meeting was no accident. Ouagadougou is more than just Burkina Faso's capital. It is the heart of African resistance. This is where Thomas Sankara once declared that Africa must stand on its own feet, free from neocolonialism. This is where Ibrahim Traoré channels that same Sankarist fire. When ECOWAS leaders stepped into Ouagadougou, they weren't just walking into a government building, they were walking into the lion's den of Pan-African defiance. And the cameras captured it all. Traoré, in his military uniform, receiving them not as a submissive pupil, but as an equal, even as a leader of a new African current. That symbolism mattered. It told the people of the Sahel, ECOWAS is coming to us now. The tables are turning. Brotherhood or bargain. But here's where it gets complicated. Words are easy. ECOWAS saying, brotherhood, is not the same as ECOWAS practicing brotherhood. What does real brotherhood mean? It means lifting sanctions immediately. It means respecting the sovereignty of Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger. It means acknowledging that security and governance challenges can be solved by copy-pasting Western-style elections. It means recognizing that the Sahel is fighting a war not just against terrorists, but against decades of exploitation and neglect. But is ECOWAS ready for that? Or are they simply trying to rebrand themselves, soften their image, and slowly bring Traoré and the AES back into the fold of old control? That's the million-dollar question. Traoré's calculated response. Now let us talk about Captain Ibrahim Traoré himself. Every move this man makes is watched not just in Africa, but around the globe. He knows the weight of symbolism. He knows the power of language. When ECOWAS leaders spoke of brotherhood, Traore didn't jump up with applause. He listened. He measured. He calculated. Traore understands something critical. The AES holds the leverage now. For the first time in decades, ECOWAS needs the Sahel more than the Sahel needs ECOWAS. Why? Because without Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, ECOWAS looks fractured, weak, and divided. And that image hurts its credibility both regionally and internationally. So Traore can afford patience. He can afford to test ECOWAS. He can afford to say, prove it. Show us your brotherhood not with words, but with actions. The stakes for ECOWAS. For ECOWAS, this is bigger than just Burkina Faso. The entire relevance of ECOWAS is on the line. If the AES succeeds in carving out its own destiny, if they survive without ECOWAS support, if they inspire other countries to follow their path, then what is left of ECOWAS? An empty shell, a tool of Western influence. That's why the meeting in Ouagadougou was so important. ECOWAS wasn't just extending a hand to Traore, they were extending a hand to their own survival. The global chessboard. But don't think for a second that this is just about Africa. No. The whole world is watching. France is panicking. The AES has dismantled decades of French dominance in the Sahel. The U.S. is scrambling, unsure whether to push harder or quietly adapt. Russia sees opportunity, sending military trainers, advisors, and partnerships. China is watching carefully, already positioning itself as the partner for Africa's future. In this global chess game, ECOWAS is trying to reposition itself too. By speaking of brotherhood, they're trying to stop the bleeding, trying to remain relevant in a rapidly shifting landscape. The people's verdict. Now let us go beyond the leaders and the speeches. Let us talk about the people. Because in the end, it's the ordinary citizens of West Africa who decide whether this new brotherhood is real or fake. On the streets of Ouagadougou, Bamako, Niamey, and beyond, people are not easily fooled anymore. They've seen decades of broken promises. They've seen ECOWAS used as a tool for Western interests. They've seen leaders act as puppets. So now, when ECOWAS says, brotherhood, the people are asking, where were you when sanctions starved us? Where were you when our soldiers died fighting terrorists without enough weapons? Where were you when France looted our gold and uranium? For them, words are cheap. Only actions matter. A new West Africa or the same old story? So here's the final question. Is this meeting a turning point? Or just another performance? If ECOWAS truly embraces brotherhood, real, tangible brotherhood, then West Africa could be entering a golden era of unity. Imagine AES strength fused with ECOWAS cooperation. Imagine a continent rising, no longer begging for crumbs from the West, but building its own future. But if this is just a trick, just a rebranding to buy time and weaken the Sahel revolutions, then it will fail. Because the people won't allow it. The AES won't allow it. Traore, Mali Gaida, Niger Tiani, they won't bend. One thing is certain. The tides have turned. West Africa will never be the same again. The brotherhood test. The ECOWAS meeting with Captain Ibrahim Traoré is more than diplomacy. It is a test of sincerity, a test of sovereignty, a test of Africa's future. Brotherhood is not spoken, it is lived. Help us reach 1,000 subscribers. Please like and subscribe to help us to provide more content like this. If ECOWAS truly means it, then the Sahel and the wider region can move toward unity, strength, and independence like never before. But if not, then the word brotherhood will become just another scar in Africa's long history of broken promises. As for Captain Ibrahim Traoré, he knows what's at stake. His people know what's at stake. And they are ready, as they've always been, to fight for dignity, sovereignty, and the dream of a free Africa. And that is why this moment matters. Because the world has changed, and West Africa has changed with it.